So you couldn't hear me very well when I was taping this, so I'll go ahead and just record over the video. But what I'm saying is this here is a 9-year-old mare that was just a pasture pet that I got. And basically all she knew beforehand was how to lead and was very pushy and not very respectful, and she just really crowded into. I since have fixed those issues. Right here, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a hindquarter yield using the lead rope as if it was your rein from her back. So I'm going to go ahead and lift that lead rope up towards her tail, and it's going to attach to her right rear foot. Right now, she's being lazy, and she should have already moved her foot, but she hadn't. But you'll see she gets a lot more responsive right away there. And I'll do it again, and you can see that within a 2 fingers and she's already stepping that right foot out and disengaging her hindquarters. So that's one method I use to teach them to disengage their hindquarters. I also do another one where I can do it with just the turn of my head and changing my body posture, and she'll completely disengage her hindquarters as well. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other, so she's proficient on both sides the same, right and left. I always have to do the same. So those two are just as easy, just 2 fingers light, and she's stepping out and disengaging that hindquarters. And like I was saying, that's the start of your one rein stop there. So if you were on their back and you get into a moment where they decide to try and take off, you can always resort back to your one rein stop and do that. Right here, I'm gonna step her over and change direction, and as you can see, as I lifted her to go over, her front right foot stepped over to change direction, and I'll be able to explain that a little bit more later on when I do another direction change. But right here, we're just doing circles. I disengage the hindquarters, and then I'm pulling her out to the side to push her forequarters back through and bring her back forward. And this here is basically teaching her how to steer from the ground. So I'm going to be able to disengage her hindquarters using my reins, and you'll see me start to do it. And then I'm going to bring her forequarters through and pull her out to the side, and you see that front right foot step out to the side and step over. We've changed directions and kept her going forward. We'll start disengaging the hindquarter, bring her out to the side, step that left front over, she crosses over, and have her take off again the other direction. So she's learning how to maneuver her front end and hindquarters using the position of the reins. Right here, I'm doing an energy test here where she is not supposed to run away from anything that she's scared of. If she gets scared of anything, she's supposed to check in with me to make sure it's nothing worth running from, because we try and teach them to use the thinking side of their brain instead of the reactive side. So as soon as she felt uncomfortable or uneasy, it was her job to go ahead and turn in and give me 2 eyes. And that's exactly what she did. She did the right answer there and not get super emotional about it. So I also teach them the leg maneuvers from the ground as well, and my hand right here is going to act like my leg. So anywhere my leg is normally going to sit, I'm going to push it back a little bit further, and that's going to tell her to move her hindquarters. So I'm going to push a little bit, push a little harder, start digging, and then if she doesn't understand it, I'm going to go ahead with the maneuver that she does understand and ask her to yield the hindquarters. And then eventually she'll be able to relate the two together, and she'll go off of just a little bit of a touch with my hand there. That means to yield the hindquarters over without me having to follow through with the rein there. But she'll know both of them by the time I get on her back at that point. And you'll see the more I work with her here in just a couple minutes, because she didn't really know any of it in this moment here, but you'll see that just working with her for a couple minutes here, that she starts to understand it. So there I started using a herding pressure where I was like using a rhythm and tapping on her. They tend to understand that a little bit better. And she disengaged her hindquarters then at that point. So she's doing resistance. I'm tapping, 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 tapping. There she stepped over. So I'm going to ask again, and then you'll see her eventually just start to do it faster and faster and get lighter and lighter about it. And then she just starts to pick up what I'm asking from her then. There was one, and right here you'll see that she's starting to grasp the concept of what I'm asking her to do. And it's taken less effort on my part. There, she got spooked at something. I think it was behind us. I don't know exactly what it was, but as you can see, she just turned to look at it, but she gave me two eyes, and she wasn't allowed to come into my safety space. So she she knew that was the case there, and she was respecting my area, which is the only thing we can ask of them. Is you're never going to get that full reactiveness out of them, but you can get them to the point of not turning and running away from whatever it is that they're scared of. They're going to always jump just like if a human would when they get scared and or flinch or something like that. They'll always do that. But what we want to get out of them is the turn and run part. So here I'm going to ask again with light pressure. I'm going to dig. There you go. You can see how that didn't take near as much effort on my part to get her to step over, and she started to understand what it was I was asking. There, she did it again. So you can see here it didn't take much time, and she's starting to understand what I'm asking there. And then I go ahead and do it with the front end where I just move my hand a little bit further forward of where my leg would normally sit, and that tells her to move the forequarters over. So I just go ahead and teach that the same way on the ground before I even get on their back. And here I'm teaching her to lower her head off of a little feel of the halter here. And I'm going to ask her to back up. There, she gave me a little resistance, so I reiterated her backing, got after her a little bit. Ideally, she would back faster, but that's something we're going to have to continue to work with a little bit there too. That just shows me that there's a little bit of a hole there in her foundation. Here, I'll drive her forward and start doing some circles again. And so you see, I just lifted up my hand a whole little bit, and she felt that feel on that lead road in that halter, and that was her cue to go ahead and start trotting. And I like the fact that she's kind of got her body on a curve to the inside, which is what I want. I want her to kind of stretch her head down, and that tells me that she's relaxing. So here she thought that I was going to want her to stop and stand there like I did the first time, but that time I'm like, nope, I'm glad you checked in with me. That was the right answer, but I want you to keep trotting. So her job right there is just to stay in the same consistent rhythm and beat and not get emotional or fearful or anything like that with the extra noise and energy going on behind her. And it's just that's her responsibility. Is she's responsible of her own feet and to stay where I put you as far as the type of rhythm and stuff that I put her in. So if I put her in a trot at a certain speed, that's where she's supposed to stay. So me even draping that string and flicking that string at her over her back, it's her job to stay at that speed no matter what, because she has to be able to figure out when my body posture means something and when it doesn't. And she's doing a very good job here as far as figuring out whether or not I'm asking her to go faster or if I'm just kind of doing more of a desensitizing thing, which is what I'm doing. And there you see I yielded the hindquarters. She gave me two eyes. and she tried to walk into me, so I'm just backing her up out of my space. Shaking the rope there is another method I teach them to back up. Sometimes she can get a little bit lazy, which she is a little bit. Ideally, I like them a little bit softer than what she is doing right now. She also does it by me just tapping the air in front of them. Ideally, she would do it without bopping her head up and throwing her head up, so that just shows me that there's a little bit of hole in the foundation there, and that it's something that needs to be worked on a little bit. Right here, I'll demonstrate me yielding her hindquarters from a look. So you see how I stepped off to the side a little bit, changed my body posture to something a little bit more assertive. And she knew that that meant that she was supposed to disengage her hindquarters and step that left rear up underneath yourself and fully disengage there. And then basically, I'm doing an example of the one rein stop there just to kind of show you that it's kind of both of them are attached to the hindquarters there. And here, she was being a little bit lazy, so I got after her, but I can just walk into her and she's crossing over and yielding that forequarters and getting out of my space, and she's respecting my area there, as you can see. And all I have to do is just walk straight into her, and she's respecting my area and just yielding that forequarters away from me without any resistance there. Um, and that was a big deal because when I first got her, there was no way that she was going to do that without me having to really, really get after her about it. So that's just an example there of the groundwork that your horse would know. And that's what I start with just for on the ground. That doesn't even include anything under saddle. But under saddle, they would basically learn those leg cues, be able to disengage the hindquarters, forequarters under saddle. We do walk, trot, cantering, everything along those lines. Um, and just kind of go from there. And every horse is going to be a little bit different, and they'll learn at their own speed. So I'm not 100% sure what I'll fully accomplish with your horse. I may accomplish more in 3 months. I may accomplish a little less than I thought in 3 months, but it just kind of depends on your horse and how they're learning. And if at 2 months you're happy at how far along they are, you could take them home at 2 months too. It's up to you. We'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll let you know the progress and work with you and make sure you understand everything that was taught to them and go from there. But definitely you'll see changes with them, that's for sure. And I guarantee my training, so anything that was taught with him while with me, he will have a guarantee on everything that I taught him while with me. And I will stand behind it